Hi, Nikhil. Well, I'm joined by Nikhil Sharma, who is in investment banking. And I've had a heck of a lot of people asking me about careers in investment banking. Which university should they go to? What courses should they do? Should they do it? What's the work-life balance like? All of those kinds of things. And I'm going to ask him those questions because, as you can see from looking at him, he is a hell of a lot younger than I am, and he's far more up to speed on all of this. So, Nikhil, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time out and joining me and doing this. The first thing I want to ask you is just introduce yourself. Tell us how you got into investment banking, which university you went to, which degree you did, and why you went into it. And then I'll ask you a whole bunch of other questions as well surrounding that, which will help people who are looking at that as a career, whether they're parents advising their kids or whether it's the young men and women watching this themselves. So yeah, please introduce yourself to begin with.
Sure, Alpesh. Good to see you, and hello everyone. So as Alpesh said, my name is Nikhil Sharma. So what am I right now? I'm a late stage second year analyst at Morgan Stanley within their investment banking team. So I joined about 2.5 years ago, pretty much straight out of university. And I can walk you through how I got there, what my team is like, and kind of what my overall views on the industry are, and how to break in. I think I'll start off by debunking one myth, which is that you don't need to have a finance background to go into investment banking. So I studied chemistry, actually more specifically natural sciences, for 3 years at Cambridge University. I must admit, I didn't have a massive interest in going to investment banking at that stage. I just wanted to enjoy being a student, playing sport, and that kind of thing. Naturally, though, you see your colleagues start applying and going to networking events and doing internships, and I had a look into it. What struck me about IBD was two things. One was the softer skills, so meeting analysts and associates and others who came to talk to us. Their confidence and the way they came across and their sort of knowledge about what they did and what they're talking about was pretty extraordinary, especially as a 19, 20-year-old student. The other thing, which I think is maybe more personal for me, is the analytical and technical side of the job really appealed to me, especially coming from a science, mathematical background as I did. So the combination of those two things got me very interested into what this industry is all about. I think we all, for good and bad reasons, investment banking and investment banks are in the press a fair amount. But I must admit, my knowledge as to what being an investment banker, what working in the M&A team actually meant. So I went about applying, and we can go into more detail later about my tips on applying and what to do. But I then went and did an internship at Nomura, and then I enjoyed it. The work was hard, very challenging, but I worked with some incredibly smart people in some extraordinary situations to be a part of at just 20 years old at the time. I decided to go back for more and worked at Morgan Stanley for the summer back in 2018. They offered me a full-time job to return in the beginning of 2019. And that's where I've been ever since. I work in the UK investment banking team. So it's working across all sectors. So that's technology, consumer, retail, real estate, but covering the UK markets.
Yeah, right. So now what I'm going to do is now break that down. I'm going to take you right to the beginning, and we're going to do it step by step for the audience. So chemistry, like you rightly said, you don't necessarily need finance as a degree, but you had a science degree. It's heavily numerical. What if somebody's got a pure arts degree? Have you got colleagues who are now at Morgan Stanley and you were at Nomura who have, say, got an English degree? I mean, I know one of my staff members I hired, she now runs billions in funds, and she did English. So I sort of know the answer to this question. But is it going to be harder for them if they're moving from a non-mathematical and a non-financial degree to get into investment banking? That's the first question.
The simple answer is there's no disadvantage. As you say, I do come from a numerical background, which helps with certain aspects of the job. But my flatmate, who we were in the same team together, he comes from a PB background and is incredible writing essays, but his numerical skills at university were a little bit less focused on. So no, as long as you have like a basic degree of be able to handle the numbers and so on, you don't have to study anything around it. I think the important thing to stress is that we need people from a range of different backgrounds with different skill sets so that we all complement each other.
Okay. So that takes care of the degree question. Now the university, you dropped in there, it was Cambridge. Now I could argue, well, if it's Cambridge, they'll take you if you've got a degree in knitting, not that they offer it. But what about, and I get a lot of people asking me, well, I've gone to a Red Brit University or not one of the Russell Group. Have you got colleagues at Morgan Stanley and Nomura who haven't been to Oxbridge, LSE, UCL, the usual suspect universities? And if so, how open is it to looking at candidates from those universities?
Sure. Fortunately, we do have colleagues from a wide range of university backgrounds. Traditionally, there has naturally been a bias towards the London focus as well as Oxbridge, but banks have worked very hard to steer away from that, quite simply because you miss out on a huge amount of talent if you focus your university selection too narrowly. So we have fortunately lots of interns this year who have come from, should we say, the non-Oxbridge backgrounds, which is ultimately very, very handy for us. The ultimate thing we're looking for in students is not, frankly, it's not the degree or necessarily the university. It's, do you have the drive and the work ethic to succeed in this industry and pick up concepts, very unfamiliar concepts at a very quick rate? If you can demonstrate that through the interview process and later on in an internship, then the original starting point, that background, it becomes less and less relevant as you go along.
So let's turn to that point then, which again is a very popular question I'm often asked, is Alpesh, what do I need to do to get my foot through the door, either as an intern or in the job application? What skills do I need to show? Now, you've mentioned soft skills, you've mentioned internships, work experience. How do they even get their foot through the door? What should they be doing at university to signal that? And especially if they've not come through the normal milk round at the universities, which tend to be the ones supplying investment bankers. What extra things have you noticed from your colleagues that they have that help them stand out? And what stood you out, that got you into Morgan Stanley? What were the clever things you were doing? What are the top tips and tricks, both in terms of extracurricular activities, but also at the interview as well, please? And what kind of things are they going to ask you? If there are places people can find this out on the internet, can they practice these things? Can they learn these interview techniques? Any help that you could give prospective candidates for investment banking?
So the starting point for most people's journeys is doing the internship. So banks more and more want to hire from an intern class. It's a little bit tougher to apply straight in as an analyst, definitely not impossible, and there are many who do. But the aim should always be to look on to get to an internship program. So taking a step back, how do we arrive at that point? So internships are generally completed in your penultimate year of study. So that'll be second or third year, depending on how long your course is. So you don't have a huge amount of time from getting to the doors at university to starting to think about this. In terms of how the application goes, I can discuss a little bit more around the details of the actual process later. But I think in terms of the more interesting part as to what do you need to do, what do you need to show, it goes without saying that a strong academic record is very important. So showing that you succeeded academically throughout school and at your university time to date, because it gives a key indication of your ability to pick up new and unfamiliar concepts, which is crucial to the day-to-day running of the job. They, by all means, do not want a one-dimensional character who's super exams but does nothing else. It is imperative that you have a wide range of interests and skills and passions. And I think the key word there is passion. People I've seen who I work in the job with, they've all done something outside of work, which is particularly interesting or sets them apart. It could be a sport, music and instruments. Seen some candidates and interns with incredible philanthropic and charity backgrounds at such a young age. So it's these things I would focus on in the early time at university. In terms of things specifically at university, being part of as I personally wasn't actually part of any finance society. I wouldn't say it's a disadvantage or an advantage to be part of the finance society. The one area where I think it helps is that you are surrounded by like-minded individuals who are all pushing the same way, and you can help each other with CVs and cover letters and understanding when processes open and that kind of thing. But we're not looking for, how would you say, in a maybe not necessarily delicate way, we're not looking for finance nerds. We're looking for well-rounded individuals who have a wide range of interests and have pushed very hard and succeeded at many of them.
So I guess it's whatever activity that they're passionate about, it signals discipline, focus, energy, and that's what you're looking for. Like you said, not necessarily as a finance geek, but it could be philanthropy. And a lot of people who message me, they don't necessarily have the networks, they don't have the parental networks, they don't have anybody who's in that field, and they don't have the money to go off and here's my summer job being teaching skiing to rich kids, and now I've got a wonderful network of people I can bring to the investment bank. They basically come from a very regular background. So how would you, or what have you noticed which has helped those who we might conventionally say don't fit the profile of what people might think investment bankers are like? How have you seen those people sort of set themselves apart? Have you got examples where you've said, well, look, that guy didn't do, or that girl didn't do the normal thing, but you know what, they set themselves apart and they were better than the rest, and that's why they're at Morgan Stanley or wherever else?
So I think I started by debunking one maybe misconception of banking. The application process and getting in is as meritocratic and as rigorous as I've seen. Gone are the days, and this applies more broadly in life, fortunately, gone are the days where you get in because you know somebody or that kind of thing. It's very much down to your own efforts. Now, on the network side, it is useful to know people as the processes go on. So when you go to these campus events and you meet analysts and associates at Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs or Credit Suisse, it's very important to stay in touch with them because they can offer you real-time guidance as the process goes through, and even flag you up to the ultimate decision makers on who to take on for the internship. Going back to what you can be doing outside of, if you're coming from even a lower base, or in many ways similar to me in that I really knew nothing about banking day one at university. Speaking to people is very helpful. In all likelihood, someone who does know someone who can give you the rundown on what's going on, what to expect, or when the processes are opening. The other thing to add to that is banks receive a huge number of applications, and the process has become very refined over the years. And their websites, although I appreciate this maybe not a super exciting point, their websites offer up a wealth of information as to what programs are available, when they're starting, when applications are open, what the various steps are, as well as highlighting. Banks run recruiting events at a huge number of universities around the country, including some sort of localized in London for anyone to come into. Being aware of when those are going and going there and connecting with people is incredibly important.
Right, so that's going to help build up those networks and that know-how. Any useful websites you can think of, or any useful training that they can do in anticipation of this to develop some of their softer skills if they're still at school or university, or even if they're just thinking about investment banking? What would you say? And also another thing, what would you say is the ratio of applications to getting an offer letter? Is it 100 to 1? Is it 200 to 1? Is it 50 to 1? What, in your experience, are the sort of typical numbers you should be looking at?
Sure. In terms of resources, the two most crucial things for actually starting that process are having a very solid CV and cover letter ready to go. Now, in terms of CVs, there is a wealth of information out there to refine it. And speaking to your careers team at university will definitely, or even at school, if you're incredibly early in your thinking, it's very helpful to get that part started. Cover letters are more specific for investment banking. They should cover a little bit on you, what sets you apart, as well as what your understanding of the bank is and why this particular bank is of interest to you and where you can really bring something to the table. There's no easy way with cover letters. They get, the first one you do can maybe have a few holes in it, and it gets better and better as you go along, and you see what works and what doesn't work. But on that, speaking to people who have gone through the process and asking them to pass theirs along to you is a very helpful resource. You'll need to get to grips with some of the technical aspects before the interviews. By no means do you need to be able to turn up and build a model day one in an interview, but having a high-level understanding of the different valuation methods of accounting is incredibly useful. For that, resources I found on the internet, Investopedia, very handy, which I'm sure many of us have come across before. There's a very useful bunch of books done by AMT, Atkins Matchett Troy, which we will get, which I was passed down by an analyst, which gives sort of introductory teaching into investment banking and accounting. It's quite easy to go through those beforehand.
Yeah, I'm going to share Investopedia, which I've often sent people to as well. And it's Pedia spelt the American way because it's an American website. And they also even do training for the CFA exam. And let me ask you about the CFA. How important do you think that is now to have to progress your investment banking degree?
So I've seen a mix of people in terms of having or not having. Personally, it's never been something that's been pushed to me to work through. I think primarily because investment banking, a lot of the it's very much like it's actually weirdly like an apprenticeship in the early days, and what you learn and what you need for the job, it's believed that you learn there on the day. And picking up a textbook would definitely say a textbook is not unhelpful, but you learn the skills very much on the job. It's not to say people haven't done the CFA. I think 10 to 15% of the people I've come across have a CFA. It's just it's a case of making time for it if available.
Yeah, no, understood. Oops, I'll try and put you back on. There we go. There you are. So we've got to, let's say, the stage where you're there. You've got the job. You're in the position, as it were. Tell me now, what's a day like? I mean, what do you enjoy without sort of, remember, let's assume your employers are going to be watching this. What do you enjoy? What don't you enjoy so much? Where do you see the future of investment banking going? Where do you see, fintech replacing some of those aspects? So give us a bit of a flavor of a day in the life of Nikhil Sharma.
Sure. Without sounding overly cliched, and because I've heard this one many times, but no day. The beauty of this job is that no day appears to replicate another. At any one time, I'll be involved in 4 to 5, even 6 pieces of work, maybe half of which are live deals going on right now, and the other bits are more on the business development side and working with our clients behind the scenes on any ideas that we have for them. As a later stage analyst, I find my work transitioning more from actually building models and putting together pages, and towards managing maybe an intern or a more junior analyst and teaching them how to do these things. So part of the job I found very interesting, which is taking this knowledge I've built up over a relatively short amount of time, particularly on the technical side, and trying to get others up to speed with it.
And that knowledge was taught to you on the job, because I've got a lot of people who are worried that they need to be, like we said earlier, finance geeks before they got into the job, but you were trained up once you were accepted.
Exactly. We have, and this will be the same for any bank, we have a month to 2 months of training before we hit the desks. The most crucial points you learn are when the analysts and the associates sit down with you in the evening and take you through things. And then later down the line, you sort of pass that forwards and do it yourself. So a fair bit of my job right now is on that managing teaching area. Would also add in, we have regular calls with clients, be it CEOs, CFOs, head of IR, head of M&A at prominent UK companies, which is an area of the job I find I still kind of pinch myself when I think about it. At 24, I'm on a call with the CFO of such and such FTSE 100 company, and he's listening to maybe someone only one level above me give their views on a situation.
Yeah,
that's a very, very a very cool side. So that's one area I particularly love. And the other, and I appreciate this might sound a little bit hand wavy, but the reason I do this job is because I love learning. The learning is what I put the most premium on.
Yeah.
And that for me is a hugely positive aspect. There are a huge number of different situations you can see or be involved in. It could be a buy side deal. It could be a private sell side. It could be a capital raising. Last year when COVID really kicked off, my seniors hadn't even seen situations as we were that we were encountering. So the opportunity to see new areas and build that skill set is endless, almost endless. In terms of the negatives, look, I think it's no myth with investment banking. It's a hard job in terms of hours. especially in those early months. It isn't sort of surprising to be pulling 15 to 18-hour days on a regular basis. And the only thing I can say about that is you have to be comfortable with that idea and be happy that the benefits from doing that outweigh the obvious costs. It does get better. The 15, 18-hour days are something I don't do as much as I used to, which is nice. I have most of my weekend, my Friday night, sometimes the odd Thursday night. So you do start to build up more work-life balance. But it's easy to get desensitized to it after 2.5 years in the job. But it is obviously not always ideal to be so focused on work for 5, 6, 7 days a week at an end.
Yeah. And of course, you're compensated well for it, which brings me to the broader subject of social mobility. I was really pleased to hear that, certainly with Morgan Stanley, but other banks, and you're Morgan, obviously, but with the other banks, they have expanded that net that they look at of people. It's not just, not if it ever was, just Etonians and Herodians or whatever. And it's not just the usual universities. It's really that they're looking for talent, because that's what will fuel their growth. And of course, that could lead also to social mobility. And for those people who've not looked at finance, I think what I find is a lot of people self-select themselves for exclusion. They just assume, oh, well, that's not going to be for me. I'm the wrong color, I'm the wrong gender, I haven't got the connection. So you know what, I'll just exclude myself. And that's fine if you don't want to do it, if you don't enjoy it, but just to be closed-minded is a problem. Do you still find that? From your profession, tone of voice, or whatever, there's just all these assumptions that you're a certain type of person, and therefore they just decide, well, I know everything about your history. You must have just been married into wealth, and you just landed this because, mummy or daddy called up the chairman of Morgan Stanley and said, would you give Nikhil a job? Do you still find that sort of prejudice and bias from people who are self-selecting themselves for failure, I guess, is what they're doing by being that close-minded? Do you still see that antagonism towards banking and finance?
From the IBD side, fortunately, we now live, at least in that part, in a world where this is no longer an issue. We don't care where you've come from, what your background is, how much money your parents have. These are just not considerations for us anymore, because it's hugely counterproductive for everyone involved. Unfortunately, the hangover from many years of this being the case over many industries does mean that, and I've had friends even from me at university said, look, I don't come from a wealthy background, or my parents are not professionals, so I just don't think I'm going to fit into this job. And it's a shame. I understand where it's coming from, but it's a shame because it just isn't the case. We're living in, thank God, an increasingly more diverse world where diversity of background, what we study, gender, sexual orientation, everything, diversity is celebrated, and not just because it's politically correct, which is incredibly important, but because it's recognized that it benefits everybody involved and ultimately the organization. So we work very hard to make sure that these biases are eliminated through every stage of the process. All I can do is implore anyone who feels that they might be excluded for skin color, gender, wealth, whatever. It's not the case. We just want people who want to learn and are ready to take on this job.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point to underline. That in my experience, people just self-select themselves, that they're not even going to send the application in, which of course makes it easier for everybody else to get through. But when I look at the head of the FCA, who was formerly CEO of London Stock Exchange, well, he was at my university, he's of Indian origin. The head of Barclays in the UK, Ashok Vaswani, he was educated in India. So the whole Eton Oxbridge thing doesn't even come in, let alone the various other heads. And we're also seeing numbers of more and more women, because they've been underrepresented on virtually every single metric, whether it's applicants to success. And are you seeing that change at Morgan Stanley as well? You're seeing, there's conventional problems that we've had in banking right across the board, in finance, both in terms of diversity, the sort of the proportionality. Are you seeing those changes?
Yes, absolutely. So in a given intern or analyst intake, we'll have a 50-50 ratio of men and women. And frankly, there are no issues in terms of the way people are treated or that kind of thing in the bank, which is fantastic to see. I can't give you numbers, but just as someone of Indian origin, looking around a given induction, there's a whole mix of English people, those of Indian origin, those from Southeast Asia, those from Europe, those of Black or African origin. It's a fantastic mix, which is getting closer and closer to fairly representing the society we now live in. And where there are gaps, where there are holes, banks do recognize them. There's definitely a degree of belief that we can always improve, we can always make it more accessible, increase the diversity, to hopefully being in a place one day where nobody ever has any preconception that this might not be for them because of some choice that they can't make.
And we must also make the reverse point that investment banking is fiercely competitive, and there isn't positive discrimination either. You're going to have to be good. That's the point. It's not that, oh, well, you tick the color box or the gender box, therefore you're going to get an easy ride in, because these banks are cutthroat. They've got, in terms of they're competitive, everybody wants to be there. And for them to survive, for a Morgan Stanley to compete against a Goldman Sachs, compete against a Bank of America or whatever else, they've got to have the best talent. And they start cutting favors by any of those factors, and they're soon going to fall behind. So we want to make absolutely clear on that point as well. There isn't, when we say meritocratic application process, we also mean not discrimination the other way, positive discrimination either.
Exactly. There's still fundamentally a hurdle that you have to jump over. Without overselling how difficult this job is, because that's something we like to do as investment bankers from time to time, what I would say is, it's important that that the young graduates you put in this job can do it. Otherwise, with the hours and sometimes with how much pressure there can be to get things done, it's not fair on them to be in that situation. So that rigorous screening process of, does this person's track record suggest that they can handle the responsibilities and the learning and the pressures of this job? That will always be at the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, as the father of a mentor of mine put it, and he was actually of Indian origin and was chairman of the London Metal Exchange, as he put it, nobody owes you a living, which is the flip side of it. Yeah, there are going to be pressures put upon you when you're looking at those kind of salaries to get things done and results demanded, and that's the flip side. It's not that you're owed this just because you went to university and so on. Look, Nikhil, I think you've given a fantastic summary of what it's like to get into investment banking, and a really useful insight to a lot of people who've been asking me these questions. I'm going to make sure this goes both on our website and on YouTube, so others can get this insight into finance more broadly, but investment banking. And once again, congratulations for getting into Morgan Stanley, because I know as an outsider looking in, that's not easy. Okay, so many congratulations indeed. And before we started this recording, I'd asked you, and you'd accepted, if you'd join us on the advisory board for City Hindus network, of which I'm chairman, where we've got people in the city who happen to be of Hindu origin. But and you'd agreed, so that's great. We've got it on camera now, so you can't back out. To be on our advisory board, because we want more younger people. Don't want them all just looking like me and waiting to sort of fall off. So fantastic that you've agreed to be on the advisory board of that. And I guess that's part of the whole networking process as well. So thank you very much for taking the time out, Nikhil Sharma, Morgan Stanley. You're an asset to Morgan Stanley, and thank you for doing this. Any last closing message you want to give to the people watching?
Thank you, Alpesh. I think the only thing I leave is for those who do embark on this journey, good luck. It's hard. It's going to require some work, but it's definitely worth it in the end.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think that's a very good message to leave with people as well. It's hard work, but it's worth it, and that's what we want in life. Don't want anything just falling on our lap, and equally want it to be worthwhile when we are working hard. So Nikhil, thank you very much indeed, and I'll end with that. And once again, thanks very much for taking the time, and make sure you don't send me the bill for this, because I know how expensive investment bankers are. Thank you.